is my pleasure to welcome you all to the valedictory ceremony of the two-day international conference on international trade and marine life and fisheries, organized by Hidayatullah National Law University and Shastri Indo-Canadian Institute. Over the 2 days, we have had the opportunity to listen to experts in the field, learn from their experiences, and share our knowledge and ideas with fellow enthusiasts. This conference has been a forum for discussion on important topics like sustainable fishery and marine conservation. We have explored new research, innovative technology, and policy developments that are helping to safeguard our marine environment to future generations. On that note, I invite Professor Dr. Uday Shankar Sir, Registrar and Professor of HNLU Raipur, to deliver the welcome address. Sir's expertise has been instrumental in the success of this conference. We are honored to have us with him today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening to all. 2 days journey on deliberating on an important area of international trade in marine life and fisheries has come to an end now with this valedictory segment of the conference. I take this opportunity of welcoming our guest for this event. I welcome our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor V.C. Vivekanandan, whose guidance and mentorship always encourages us to give our best. Sir, welcoming you on behalf of the organizing committee. I also welcome Ms. R.V. Anuradha, Partner and Head, International Trade and Investment Laws Practice, Claris Law Associates. Madam, welcome to you for this session, and your insights will guide the organizing committee to enhance the resource base on this important area on intersection of law and oceanography. Thank you, Madam, for joining this valedictory function. I also welcome Mr. Sanjay Upadhyay, Advocate, Supreme Court of India, and founder, managing partner of Enviro Legal Defense Firm. This law firm has been working for more than 2 decades on the cause of environment in India and made a phenomenal contribution in the growth of environmental law in the country. Sir, welcome you to this valedictory function and agreeing to be part of it on a very short notice. We really appreciate and acknowledge your support for the university. I also welcome Mr. Sanjay Notani ji, Senior Partner and Head, International Trade and Customs Practice, Economic Laws Practice, Advocates and Solicitors. Sir, your immense knowledge in this area is going to be very beneficial for all of us and going to help us in further creating a knowledge base and also getting a thought process that how to move ahead on this important topic. Welcome you to the valedictory function, sir. Let me also welcome the organizing secretary, Professor Ankit Avasthi, and co-secretary, Professor Rana Navneet Roy, in this valedictory function. Lastly, I welcome my colleagues who have joined this session, and in technical sessions, they have chaired and co-chaired and guided the paper presenters. And I'm welcoming the participants and our own students in this valedictory function. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. I now invite Dr. Ankit Avasthi, sir, the secretary of this conference, to deliver the conference report. Sir has been the backbone of this conference, and his excellent organizing skills and attention to detail was crucial in making it eventful and productive. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Nisha. On 3rd of March 2023, following nearly 36 hours of non-stop negotiations, Mrs. Rene Lee, the UN General Assembly Intergovernmental Conference on Marine Biodiversity President, reported that the Conference on Marine Biodiversity finished the text for a historic new Maritime Biodiversity Treaty on Marine Biodiversity of Areas Beyond National Jurisdiction, that is BBNJ. As the conference room burst into thunderous applause and cheers from delegations and participants when she said that the ship has reached the shore. In this background, it's an honor for me to present the report of 2-day international conference organized by Hidayatullah National Law University under the aegis of Shastri Indo-Canadian Institute. Mr. Erik Solheim, Green politician, Norwegian diplomat, former Minister of Climate and the Environment, Norway, and the sixth and former UN Environment Executive Director and Under Secretary General of the United Nations, was the chief guest of the inaugural ceremony. Dr. Rajan Sudesh Ratna, Deputy Head and Senior Economic Affairs Officer, UN ESCAP, South and Southwest Asia Office, was the guest of honor. The inaugural ceremony was also graced by Dr. Prachi Kaul, Director, Shastri Indo-Canadian Institute. With an aim to create extensive awareness about trade in marine life and fisheries in India, as well as internationally, the conference was structured in two parts. In the first part, there were two panel discussions on the theme of safeguarding marine life and fisheries through SDGs, charting a path towards a sustainable future, and navigating the intersection of blue economy, human rights, and developing countries, a comprehensive view. Professor Dr. Mukesh Bhatnagar, independent consultant on fisheries subsidies and international trade issues, Mr. Sunil Muralidhar Shastri, consultant ocean and environmental governance, Dr. Ritu Dhingra, IUCN CESP regional vice chair, East and Southern Asia, Ms. Catherine Hoyes, legal consultant and solicitor, Aquarius lawyer, Sydney, Australia, Ms. Lourdes Kant, managing director, Manatee Holdings Limited, Canada, Dr. Rashmi Agrawal, professor, Shiv Nadar University, Ms. Raina Fan, head of science, communication and outreach, Whale Seekers Incorporation, Montreal, Canada, Professor Abhijit Das, international trade policy and WTO expert, Dr. V.R. Madhu, principal scientist, ICAR, Central Institute of Fisheries Technology, Ms. Ipsita Chaturvedi, partner, environment and natural resources law, Denton Roddick, Singapore, Mr. Byron Manites, senior associate, Steptoe and Johnson LLP, EU in Brussels, Belgium, Dr. Sanu Jacob, director, National Food Laboratory, Chennai, Mr. Amod Ashok Salgaonkar, Director, Chamber for Advancement of Small and Medium Businesses, India, Ms. Anu Monga, partner, Anant Law, solicitors and advocates, and Ms. Shishra Joni, international trade lawyer and policy advisor, were eminent panelists. The conference had an overwhelming response from the students, research scholars, and professionals. In the second part of the conference, there were total 44 selected paper presentations in 6 technical sessions on 13 themes, such as agreement on fisheries, future discourse, SDGs and marine life, livelihood and fisheries, life below water and pollution, gender perspective on marine life, and pandemic and its effect on the marine life. This conference witnessed the participation of leading academic institutions and other organizations such as Jindal Global Lloyd School, NLU Odisha, DSNLU Vishakhapatnam, CNLU Patna, NLU Nagpur, DNLU Jabalpur, Nuals Kochi, University of Delhi, Central University of Jharkhand, Guru Ghazidas University, Christ University, Symbiosis University, Amity University, Rashtriya Raksha Shakti University, Kerala University of the Fisheries and Ocean Studies, and Arise IIP India Private Limited, to name a few. This conference has witnessed overwhelming response from the industry as well. Aquarius Lawyer, a law firm specializing in the marine and fisheries industry based in Sydney, Australia, Regiolex, a trade law and policy consulting firm headquartered in Nairobi, Kenya, Anand Law Solicitors and Advocates, and Singhania and Company LLP were the industry partners. And Gujarat Maritime University and Dao Shri Vasudhao Chandrakar Kamdhenu Vishwavidyalaya, Chhattisgarh were the academic partners. SCC Online, EBC, and Live Law were also associated with the conference and media partners. I take this liberty to include in this report Ms. R.B. Anuradha, partner and head, International Trade and Investment Laws Practice, Clarius Law Associate, and Mr. Sanjay Upadhyay, Advocate, Supreme Court of India, and founder and managing partner, Enviro Legal Defense Firm, are gracing the valedictory ceremony as guest of honors, and Mr. Sanjay Notani, senior partner and head, International Trade and Custom Practice, Economic Law Practice, Advocates and Solicitor, is gracing the ceremony as chief guest. Lastly, as renowned marine biologist and oceanographer Sylvia Ellis stated in the book titled "The World is Blue, How Our Fate and the Oceans Are One," that even if you never have the chance to see or touch the ocean touches you with every breath you take, every drop of water you drink, every bite you consume. Everyone, everywhere is inextricably connected to and utterly dependent upon the existence of the sea. The present WTO Director General in the Sustainable Blue Economy Investment Forum last year in the Portugal also said that today over 3 billion people depend on the marine and the coastal biodiversity for their livelihood. How quickly and how well we manage these resources and the decisions we all make now will greatly impact people and the planet for decades to come. This is a moment for global cooperation and for global solidarity. Towards this end, and to create awareness globally about ocean governance, conservation, and sustainability, a humble attempt has been taken by HNLU Raipur along with SICI. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for shedding light on the outcomes of this conference. I now invite Professor Dr. V.C. Vivekanandan, sir, our beloved and honorable Vice Chancellor, to present the opening remarks. Sir has been a driving force behind this conference through his wealth of knowledge and expertise. We are grateful for his guidance, without which this conference would not be a huge success. We are honored to have you with us, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sanjay Upadhyaya, who's joined us today in the valedictory session. Mr. Sanjay Nutani, who has also joined. I welcome on my behalf. And I'm very much delighted on another account of Ms. Anuradha joining us today. Incidentally, Ms. Anuradha was a student when I was in National Law School, and there cannot be a greater delight when your students excel than you and to become, sometimes your colleague and sometimes your own teacher. This I have seen with many students. So I'm quite happy when I saw her name given by the organizers. It flashed to me very interestingly. I might have had Anuradha some names, but her initial always stuck with me. So I immediately asked Ankit, is she one from law school? He said yes. And so I'm quite delighted to have her also here today to listen to her. And my, what we call as presence here, you would say more some level, it's a protocol as a Vice Chancellor, right? Sometimes try to inspire the organizers who are doing this. My understanding of this particular domain is limited, but I do deal tangentially with international trade, especially when I am in the field of intellectual property rights, TRIPS agreements. We always have a lot of jurisprudential issues between TRIPS, intellectual property, is a driving force of trade. On the other side, you have CBD, Convention on Biodiversity. So this always is the central point of many, what I call as challenges and clashes when you're really talking about international agreements, which means on one side, we are talking a kind of a progress, a development. On the other side, we are talking about what development, how far it can go, how far, other things needs to be balanced. So probably that's also, in my opinion, if I feel, apart from many things which might have discussed in the last 2 days, we also move to what you call as the central issue, what you call as a sustainable resource management, whether marine life as well as fisheries. At least a few legal things which would, in my opinion, I was not privy to many of the discussions happened due to my other preoccupations today, but I do presume this would have been touched upon. But if I could recapitulate, the whole thing is illegal, unreported, and unregulated, or they call IUU fishing, which is a major problem in many parts of the world, which can lead to overfishing, depletion of fish stocks, and other negative impacts. The number of international agreements and organizations working on this, including the Port State Measures Agreement or FAO Agreement on Port State Measures. Another area to be researched and carry forwarded as a part of this particular discussion is the subsidies issue of the fisheries. How far this financial incentives provided by the government to support the fishing industry and its impact. These subsidies can be beneficial in certain cases, can also lead to overfishing and depletion because it encourages in a different way. So the World Trade Organization is currently engaged in negotiations to address this issue, and I'm sure that this could be one of the concerns or areas to be dealt with in the coming days. Then you have the MPAs, what you call as marine protected areas, which are areas of the ocean that are protected to conserve marine life and habitats. And there's an increasing recognition of the importance of MPAs for the health of the marine ecosystem. And there are also legal challenges associated with the creation and management of MPAs, particularly where there are competing interests for the use of marine resources. The climate change obviously encompasses, encircles every other trade or every other form of life today. And so climate change is having a significant impact on the marine ecosystem, including changes in ocean temperature, acidity, sea level, etc. So there are a number of international agreements, and especially the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change of the Paris Agreement, all take a center stage. So, in my opinion, as a kind of a follow-up of this workshop, which also, in my understanding, is the first time taken up by HNLU, along with some academic partners, including the Maritime University of Gujarat, is certainly will be a kind of a starting point of to further research, further to extend this discussions, workshops into a larger conference. This will pave way, and in that context, let me take this opportunity to congratulate the team of faculty, especially headed by Dr. Ankit Awasthi, who got this project from the Indo-Sastri Institute, and Ms. Prachi Kaur was there yesterday, and this is also a first foray of collaborating with them and doing. I'm sure that this is the not the end of the conference today. In a way, it's a beginning of larger discussion, and we are able to also network with so many other experts who have come, and that will be a very productive relationship for HNLU in the days to come. So, with these comments, let me also congratulate the organizers as well as other faculty who have supported this, and other staff of IT people, other people who supported this online workshop. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. We are pleased to have Mr. Sanjay Upadhyay as our guest of honor today. He is an advocate at the Supreme Court of India. He is the founder and managing partner at Enviro Legal Defense Firm. He has served as an environmental law expert to many reputed international, national, and multilateral institutions like the World Bank, IUCN, FAO, UNDP, among others. We welcome you, sir. We are grateful for your virtual presence here with us today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Professor Vivekanandan, Professor Uday, Professor Avasthi, my panelist in chief, Sanjay Notani and R.V. Anuradha, again a dear friend whom I know since many, many years. It's a real honor to be present at the valedictory session. I'll try to be as brief as possible. Lawyers tend to be specialists in every field, but certainly this is one area that interests me a lot. And I've been fortunate to be part of certain UN-related work along with the Government of India. So I'll just very quickly share some of those experiences. I'm sure in these 2 days, sustainable harvest or respect for local livelihoods, especially in terms of artisanal fisher folk, how that needs to conform to the international regulations or the coastal laws must have been discussed. Three very major points pointed out, 3 or 4 points pointed by Professor Vivekanandan as well, in terms of illegal fishing that is unreported, especially the fishing subsidy, MPAs, and climate change. I think these are very, very important issues that he has flagged. But let me just take you back to some of the international cooperation that we've had in India. And I remember the UN FAO getting involved with the Ministry of Agriculture, where the Department of Fisheries is located. And they did almost a 2-year-long study on the challenges from the legal perspective on the fisheries sector. And it was my fortune to be part of that study as well. And I see that even after 15 odd years, a lot of issues still resonate quite a lot within the country. So let me just quickly point out some of those. One framework that we discussed then and even relevant today is about use-oriented laws that we have. In fact, my Guru Chhatrapati Singh used to say that 77% of the laws are use-oriented in the environmental law regime. About 22% are acquisition-related. Hardly about 10% are conservation or 1% on regeneration. So there's a whole skewed framework that we have, unfortunately, that we need to look at. But what is important is that the use-oriented laws need to be integrated with the conservation and sustainable use framework, especially for oceans and coasts. So that is the first, I would say. We often see the landward side of the ocean being regulated quite a lot, but the ocean side of the regulation is not really regulated so much. I don't know how many of you know, but in the 90s, there was a huge conversation on ocean regulation zone, and there was a move to actually make an ocean regulation zone notification, just as we have the CRZ. And it is still a debate, and I don't think that has really gone forward. But I think these concepts need to be revisited. If you look at the use-oriented laws in terms of fisheries, the linkage of the Fisheries Act, which is an 1897 vintage, the recent one coming now, and the link with the trade-related laws are quite minimal, I would say. And I think that linkage is very important in terms of the resource and also the trade. If you look at, for example, the safety convention certificates mechanism under the Merchant Shipping Act or the port regulations, all these need to be integrated with the fisheries laws, which it currently does not. The other important factor that I see in my understanding is the whole concept of zonation. If you look at the zonation of the ocean side or the coastal side, you will not find many linkages to the fishery resource itself or marine resources themselves. So I think that zonation and its linkage with fishery resource is very, very important. Of course, ecological aspects, are talked about, through various laws and agreements that we've had. If I'm not mistaken, we have signed close to 15 or 16 international instruments. About 10 international or 10 national ministries are involved in the ocean space. Almost 29 to 30 regulations we have which impacts oceans. But that coordinated framework still has to be worked upon as far as I'm concerned. The example of, for example, the threat from invasive species. If you look at that, only now the Wildlife Act, which is going to be notified, the Amendment Act of 2022, which is going to be notified on 1st of April, finally takes cognizance of invasive species. Now, these are a huge threat to our marine resources. We need to really look at that fairly seriously. Although the courts have been fairly active, I would say, in parts to look at, the methods of regulating fishing gears, for example, whether it is the TEDs of turtles or whether it is the purse seine that is just allowed, for example, in another recent case. But that is another area that we need to understand very clearly in terms of the fishing gears themselves and how they impact fishing resources. And I think that's, again, quite a challenge, I would say. The deep sea fishing regulations, again, is an area that is now being, again, taken seriously with the new, I think, the deep sea fishing or the Treaty on the High Seas coming up. So I think those, again, are important areas that we need to really work on. And last but not the least, the protecting of or the protection of the traditional fisher folks and their claim on the space. I still remember in 2009 when we went ahead and drafted the Fisher Folk Rights Act, almost like the Forest Rights Act for traditional fisher folks. But again, these were ideas which never really went ahead in terms of its real implementation on the ground. We still don't have that law. Some of the recent concerns I'm just going to flag is about how we are actually managing our protocol routes, especially the bilateral routes. There are a lot of disputes between, let's say, the Indo-Bangladesh treaty that we have, for example, which crosses the Sundarbans. There have been cases that are coming up in terms of how the barges are being looked at, how fly ash is being transported, what are the safety mechanisms there. And these are real challenges that we need to really address by way of, proper standard operating procedures, for example. How do you look at cumulative impact of mangroves, for example? What is the linkage with the fishery resource? How do you actually promote biological impact assessments on marine life, on coastal projects, for example? These are a lot of areas that we need to really work on. I know that internationally we keep talking about SDGs and its linkage with the blue economy. Even this government has been fairly active in drafting the policy framework, which is, I think, still on a draft stage in terms of, what India's blue economy should be, for example. There's a lot of focus on offshore sovereignty, what will be the economically valuable resource in water, in seabeds, what are the onshore infrastructure, what kind of onshore infrastructure we will have, how do we deal with offshore energy resources, how do we look at fossil-based or renewable-based energy in the ocean side, marine technologies, and the list goes on in that huge draft policy framework on India's blue economy. In fact, there is some movement, and I would say the government is rather serious, and we need to really take this as an opportunity. if you look at, for example, the budget for the center's deep ocean mission, I think that has increased from 300 crores to 600 crores in the recent budget. So I think there is this move towards looking at the center's deep ocean mission fairly carefully. And I think institutions like ours, universities, law firms, and other, Shastri Academy, the Indo-Shastri Institute, for example, all like-minded institutions, I think this is an opportunity for us to engage more with the government on these issues, and I think that is where I think the opportunities lie. And I would say that these are very interesting times for lawyers and policy workers to get engaged, especially those who have field-based knowledge, to engage and improve our policy framework, our implementational framework. So with those words, I really thank once again the university, as well as Professor Uday and Professor Vivekanandan for giving me this opportunity. And I'm here to listen to the other speakers. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much for your insightful words, sir. We are extremely honored to have Mr. Sanjay Nothani as our chief guest today. He is the senior partner and head of international trade and customs practice at Economic Laws Practice, Advocates and Solicitors. He is a member of the Supreme Court Bar of India, the American Bar Association, Inter-Pacific Bar Association, Customs and International Trade Bar Association, among many others. Sir has the distinction of being appointed to the American Bar Association Steering Group, which is related to Export Controls and Economic Sanctions Committee to represent Asia. We would like to extend our warmest welcome to you, sir. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to address us today.
Good afternoon. It is my pleasure to be invited here. First of all, I would like to thank Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. Ankit, as well as all my other friends and folks. Surely we are living in the most interesting times, given that every day and now, climate sustainability is something that we need to sort of cross our paths seriously and immediately. However, said and done, we also see geopolitically the world is in a very, very innocuous phase right now, and I think we'll have to wait and watch. Given that, before I get into the main theme of this particular topic, I would like to sort of give you a little state of play, because trade lawyers are basically lawyers first, of course, but of course, a lot of things also work to us in a more commercial perspective. So during financial year 21-22, India exported about 13.6 lakhs metric tons of seafood, which was worth about 7.7 billion to the world, which is an all-time high. Despite the COVID setbacks which we had, seafood exports expanded by about 30.26% in the US dollar terms, and most importantly, about 19.12% in terms of quantity terms as compared to the last year. So as things stand, of course, the 12th ministerial conference, which was held on 12th to the 17th of June 2020 in Geneva, of course, the WTO members look forward to forging an historic agreement on fishery subsidies. India was, of course, a very, very key player in securing the right of the developing countries to allow certain types of subsidies for developing countries, as well as securing a transition period for both the developing and least developing countries on the prohibition of certain types of subsidies. However, some finer points in the agreement, such as overcapacity and overfishing, are to be also comprehensively being negotiated in the 13th round, which we will have to see exactly how things pan out. And of course, the agreement requires that the members come out with most comprehensive disciplines within the next 4 years, or see the current agreement terminated. Now, looking at that sort of background, what are the key issues which we need to consider both at the domestic as well as the international level? Despite India's considerable marine trade, there are several obstacles that may impede our progress in this space. India must and we must therefore be cognizant to take these balanced approach both at the domestic and international levels to address these concerns. What are the macro factors? Macro factors such as climate change may change the pattern of fish stocks or may result in the extinction of certain varieties of marine life, clearly affecting all of the things on the ocean floor. Micro factors such as the rising incidence, the non-tariff barriers being propped up by other nations in the world also are stifling trade and consequently marine trade. Now, how do we address some of these issues? So we as stakeholders have to understand and engage with India's multilateral and bilateral engagements to see and to improve their positions in marine trade, such as the WTO agreement of fishery subsidies and various bilateral FTAs which are being signed. As stated previously, the agreement of fisheries allows for subsidized aim at rebuilding fish stocks in a region to a biologically sustainable level. Therefore, stakeholders should inform the government to leverage the opportunity to target their indirect as well as direct subsidy levels towards rebuilding fish stock in problematic areas. At the regional level, stakeholders should leverage regional fisheries management organizations or arrangements in order to make their voice heard and ensure that the Indian fishermen are adequately represented. As of now, India is a contracting party to the Indian Ocean Tuna Commission and a non-cooperating party to the Southern India Ocean Fisheries Agreement. Wherever possible, stakeholders should therefore ensure that India's interests are represented in this fora as well. And these are the organizations where important decisions regarding fishing allocations and statistical recordings are made. Further, FTAs provide direct benefits to the marine trade by reducing costs for marine products. Considering the high export potential for marine products, the existence and the magnitude of these tariffs which are applied on the said products heavily affects the amount of revenue that can be generated. FTAs therefore clearly remove the subjective cost by securing direct tariff measures as well as concessions by parties, thus reducing both the overall cost of the marine trade as well as the subjectivity involved in the access to the import market. Additionally, also along with the direct cost benefits which the FTAs provide, they can also act an important platform for discussing non-tariff barriers to marine trade. Marine-based imports are understandably subjected to a large number of quality and sanitary standards on account of the public health implications in case of low quality imports. However, these standards may often not be cost feasible or may be onerous for all of us to adhere to. FTAs therefore have the potential to act as a forum to allow parties to establish clarity on the standards that would apply to marine trade, as well as also allows the parties to set standards and procedures with due consideration to the industry of both parties in the context of their respective level of technological as well as operational development. The FTAs thus not only reduce cost of marine trade, but they will also have the potential to reduce or considerably take care of potential barriers that indirectly raise all these costs. Thus, we in India, looking at the existing FTA negotiations in order to get our foot inside the door to initiate these conversations in a most formal fashion, it is important that with countries such as EU, which is one of our biggest markets for seafood, present an opportunity for cooperation of a formal framework and outlook as and when these are signed. Lastly, the shrimp regulatory partnership agreement with USA is a good example where India is able to keep consignment rejections in check in a major market. This agreement, of course, provides for regulatory cooperation between MPDA and US FTA on inspection protocols and most importantly, assessment tools, which allow India to provide all compliance related documentation to their counterparts so that the US FTA has a confidence in regulatory processes followed by India. Therefore, it is important that the seafood industry imbibe sustainable technologies into its production process to limit wastage and bycatch, and thus making India one of the leading countries in order to ensure that the fisheries and the fishing industry makes the most of it in this globalized world. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your words of wisdom, sir. We are now delighted to have Ms. R.V. Anuradha as our guest of honor today. She is the partner and head of international trade and investment laws practice in Claris Law Associates. She is also a member of the International Law Association's Committee on Sustainable Development and Green Economy and Asia WTO Research Network. She has the distinguished honor of being recognized as a leading practitioner by chambers and partners. We welcome you, ma'am. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with us today.
Thank you so much to HNLU. Thank you very much, Professor Vivekanand, for your extremely kind words and mutually reciprocate the emotion I felt when I realized when the invite from HNLU came for this conference. Pleasure to be here, and apologies for running a little late, but thank you, Sanjay Notani, and thank you, Sanjay Upadhyay, for taking the floor first and setting the stage in terms of the key issues for discussion. I'll keep my remarks brief, but also in terms of drawing the linkages between what both the Sanjay spoke about. Sanjay Upadhyay focused on the environmental aspects and environmental agreement part of it, and Mr. Notani focused predominantly on the trade opportunities, the challenges, and what we really need to do. And where I see both of this coming together is in the fundamental interconnectedness of it all. And so just to, I realize that for the last 2 days you would have discussed threadbare each of what I call the three key developments that we have seen in the last year or so. One is the WTO's agreement on fisheries subsidies that Professor Vivekanand spoke about and Sanjay Notani just spoke about, which prohibits subsidies that can lead to illegal, unreported, unregulated fishing, the IUU fishing. And of course, as has already been stated, it's unfinished agenda because the remaining part of the discussions at WTO, the ongoing discussions, are on how to tackle overcapacity and overfishing. And this is where I see the tremendous interconnectedness with the other two key developments. One, which Dr. Avasthi pointed out in his opening remarks, which is the UN Convention on Law of the Sea on conservation and sustainable use of marine biological diversities in areas beyond national jurisdiction. For simplicity purposes, it's been referred to sensibly as the High Seas Treaty, basically regulating fisheries, which was absolutely unregulated so far because high seas was seen as an area where no country needed to be disciplined. So driving home and having a treaty, laying down clearly the rights and obligations of countries with regard to high seas resources was a tremendous achievement. And then there is yet another document which perhaps hasn't been spoken about as much as it should, and this is the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework of December 2022, which was an offshoot of the Convention on Biological Diversity, and which also, to a large extent, fed into the High Seas Treaty on certain critical aspects. Each of these developments, nobody can disagree, are critical, heartening developments involving the fact that majority of countries of the world could come together to address global challenges in a meaningful manner is no mean feat at all. But greater critical thinking, in my view, is absolutely necessitated, because at the end of the day, this is important because this is not really about conservation and protection of resources, but underlying each of the agreements is the interest of each country on how to exploit the resources, given that it's a highly valuable and exhaustible natural resource. And I really liked what Sanjay Upadhyay mentioned, if I got you right, that Chhatrapati Singh's point of view that less than 10% of environmental law, and I think you mentioned it in the context of domestic law, but I think it's perhaps more so applicable in the context of international environmental law, which is that less than 10% of this environmental law is conservation oriented and mostly use oriented. And I think that is absolutely bang on the point. You highlighted, issues such as use of TEDs, Percy nets, methods of conservation. Now, each of these aspects doesn't come naturally, and each of it, adopting a particular form of fishing involves cost, involves economic, there are economic consequences to it. And it also therefore means that higher technology and higher use of resources to achieve this is absolutely fundamental. The WTO's agreement on fisheries is inept to address any of this, because WTO is an agreement about trade. It's an agreement about how do you maximize economic potential. Of course, in the case of what is highly touted as the first agreement to bring in sustainable development to the core of trade, the agreement of fisheries does make some headway, but it does not deal with the interlinkages and consequences. How do you conserve? How do you adopt better practices? How do you ensure that there is access to better technology? And this brings me to the third pillar, which is the Kunming Protocol, the Kunming Conference, and the document, the discussion document that it laid out, which also to a large extent focuses on the common goal of mankind to address marine resources, while recognizing that developing countries, which are both coastal countries and landlocked countries, need access to transfer of marine technology to ensure conservation and sustainable use of marine biological diversity. Having said all of this, so basically if we look at it as three pillars, we have the WTO's agreement on fishery subsidies, which is going to evolve further, which is going to put greater discipline and conservation and fisheries management. It is woefully inadequate and almost silent on technology transfer. As a lip service, what it constitutes is a voluntary fund that developed countries will contribute to for the purposes of enabling developing countries to adhere to its discipline. Then we have the High Seas Treaty, and then we have the Kunming document. Both these documents talk about the importance of technology transfer and particularly marine technology transfer. So both the High Seas Treaty and to a larger extent the Kunming document talks, the biodiversity framework that it laid out, talks about the economic dimension in terms of how countries will share the marine genetic resources and eventually the profits arising out of these resources. One of the largest, I would say, unfinished businesses of the High Seas Treaty was to particularly address this aspect, the unresolved issue of the economic dimension. How will countries fairly share in the marine genetic resources and the eventual profit? And underlying the lack of agreement was really the lack of trust. There was lip service to fairness, equity. You'll see it liberally smattered through these documents. But in terms of how to achieve it, there's absolutely very, very minimal progress. The potential for monetary value of marine resources, as we all understand, is immense. Mr. Nutani talked about a fair amount of marine trade and the potential relating from that, the statistics relating to that. Underlying this is that here we're talking about fisheries and fisheries resources, but marine organisms themselves, the genetic resource part of it, have huge potential as well. And particularly in relation to those that rest in the high seas, who's going to get the benefits out of it? If the theory is that high seas belongs to common resource of mankind, belongs to everybody, then the actual potential for realizing the benefits from it should also be equally shared. But do we think that is realistically possible in the largely mercantilist world that we live in? Perhaps very, very minimal chances for that. To give examples of two successful drugs that will resonate with us. One is Halloween, which is a blockbuster anti-cancer drug derived from a Japanese sea sponge. Annual sales of $300 million. Who does it go to? The pharma company that manufactures it. The other is closer to home. It's the COVID-19 remdesivir. It got a lot of famous and infamous coverage during COVID-19. This too is an antiviral drug that is derived from marine resources. So at the end of the day, there is knowledge, there is ability for exploiting resources, there is ability to conserve resources, but underlying each of the conservation agreements that we have we have arrived at, however wonderful the achievements underlying these, is a fight, the fight for who is going to control how much. And there I remain a little skeptical, a little cynical, and therefore I would also urge caution, and I would urge that greater scholarship among the resources that is being put in should be to see the interconnectedness between these very diverse, but I would say highly integrated developments. Thanks.
Thank you so much for your informative address, ma'am. I now invite Dr. Deepak Srivastav, sir, Associate Professor and Dean of the Undergraduate Studies, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you is such a prayer that cannot be seen or touched. It must be felt by heart. Good evening to everyone. I feel honored and privileged to get the opportunity to propose vote of thanks on behalf of the Hidayatullah National University on the valedictory ceremony of two-day International Conference on International Trade in Marine Life and Fisheries. First of all, I would like to propose hearty vote of thanks to our chief guest, Mr. Sanjay Notani, Senior Partner and Head, International Trade and Customs Practice, Economic Laws, Practice, Advocate and Solicitors, for gracing valedictory ceremony of the conference. Thank you, sir, for your interesting and thought-provoking address. I would like to thank to our guest of honor, Mr. Sanjay Upadhyay, Advocate, Supreme Court of India, founder and managing partner, Enviro Legal Defense Firm, for your valuable thought and benign presence. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Ms. R.V. Anuradha, partner and head, International Trade and Investment Law Practice, Claris Law Associates, for accepting our invitation to be the guest of honor for the occasion and sharing your experience on the subject matter. I, on behalf of the organizing team, convey my deep regard and hearty thanks to our beloved Vice Chancellor, Sir, Professor Dr. V.C. Vivekanandan, for his constant help and guidance that radiated a source of energy within us. We will ever remain grateful to you, and we thank you for being with us. I would also like to thank our beloved Registrar Professor Dr. V. Uday Shankar, sir, for his moral support and guidance at various stages of this conference. I am also thankful to all the panelists, co-chairpersons, chairpersons of all the sessions, and I truly lack word to thank them for their precious time and contribution for the success of this event. I am thankful to all the participants for your intense level of participation. I am very much thankful to all our deans, faculty colleagues who always stand by us and motivate us. I feel proud to thank you for making this event a successful one. And last but not the least, this event would not have been possible without the support of organizing committee comprises of Dr. Ankit Awasthi, Secretary of the conference, Dr. Rana Navneet Roy, and other faculty members of the organizing committee and students. I thank them from the core of my heart for their relentless hard work, coordination, and wonderful execution of the task. Thank you all of you for making this event successful. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. As we come to the end of this conference, let us take with us the knowledge and inspiration we have gained and use it to make a difference in our communities and beyond. Thank you all for being a part of this journey and for your contribution towards the conservation of our precious marine life and fisheries. With the permission of our Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, I now declare the valedictory ceremony of this two-day international conference closed. I hope you all have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.